You know what's wild? No matter how famous Blake Shelton became, there was always one place that never changed for him: 10 Point Ranch. People talk about celebrity homes all the time, but this ranch wasn't a mansion built on a hill for show. It was 10,000 acres of his entire identity. He bought that land slowly, piece by piece, long before Gwen Stefani ever walked into his life. And every piece of it meant something: childhood memories, family history, a space untouched by the noise of fame. It's hard to understand unless you've lived in a place that feels like part of your DNA.
Exactly, and that's why the ranch took on such a powerful meaning in their relationship. When Gwen first stepped into that world, it was like watching two opposite universes collide. Los Angeles glam meets Oklahoma country. She didn't just visit the ranch, she immersed herself in it. She learned to fish, planted corn with Blake, rode around with him on tractors, walked the dirt trails in her camel pants and boots, and genuinely fell in love with the simplicity of it all. You could see it in interviews. She talked about how peaceful she felt there, how it showed her a side of herself she didn't even know existed.
And it wasn't just a place for weekend getaways. They built their life there. They designed a massive home meant to merge their two worlds and give space for her sons and their blended family. And then they built that chapel, by hand, on the hill, just for their wedding day. That alone says so much. You don't build a chapel unless you believe the place will be part of your forever. The ranch evolved from Blake's sanctuary into their shared paradise, something that symbolized the merging of their identities.
Which is what made the shift in their relationship so heartbreaking. Because while the photos showed joy, farming together, fishing, laughing on tractors, there were cracks forming underneath. And those cracks weren't just emotional, they were practical. Blake owned the land before the marriage, so legally it was considered separate property. But the home they built together, that was a marital asset. And suddenly, you have this emotional and legal knot, a house belonging to both of them, sitting on land that belonged only to him.
Yeah, and that's not an issue you fix with a single signature. That's decades of identity tied to one person and nearly a decade of memories tied to the other. For Blake, the idea of being forced to sell any part of that land, let alone the home built on it, was unthinkable. It wasn't about money, it was about losing a part of himself. And for Gwen, walking away from the ranch wasn't just leaving a house. It was letting go of the place where her kids bonded with Blake, where she became a different version of herself, where she believed her future was rooted.
And this is why the ranch became the emotional center of everything. It wasn't just real estate. It was the symbol of their entire relationship, the place where they fell in love, where they merged their lives, and where things eventually became too complicated to hold together.
What really complicated everything was how differently Blake and Gwen saw the future of that ranch once their marriage began to fracture. Blake had always treated 10 Point Ranch as an extension of himself, almost like a living memory of the life he came from. To him, it was untouchable. It wasn't a question of whether he wanted the ranch. It was a question of how he could possibly continue life without it. His whole sense of grounding came from that land. You could see it every time he talked about it, whether he was joking about being happiest on a tractor or describing how peaceful it felt compared to the chaos of touring and television.
Meanwhile, Gwen's connection to the ranch had grown in a completely different direction. She wasn't rooted in Oklahoma the way Blake was, but she had built a version of home there. Her kids had memories running through the fields, riding around with Blake on tractors, experiencing something simple and grounding that they never had growing up in Los Angeles. The ranch became symbolic of this new chapter of her life, one where she blended motherhood, creativity, and love in a way that felt stable and refreshing. That's why the emotional weight of the ranch hit her just as hard, even if she didn't have decades of history with it.
But the real tension came from the fact that the ranch had started to shift from being a shared dream back into something that felt like it belonged more to Blake than to both of them. When a place means so much to one person, it can unintentionally turn into a point of imbalance. It's like Gwen stepped into Blake's world with open arms, but Blake never completely shifted into hers. Their lives were constantly split into two realities: her world in California and his world in Oklahoma. And the ranch, instead of being a middle ground, slowly became a reminder of how far apart those worlds really were.
Exactly, and that's difference in perspective is what made the legal situation so dangerous. The home they built together wasn't just a house, it was a physical symbol of the life they promised each other. But because it sat on land Blake owned before the marriage, separating the two became a legal nightmare. And it wasn't just the house itself, it was the meaning behind it. If the court forced a sale, Blake would lose a part of his identity. If Gwen relinquished her claim, she'd feel like she was giving up the future she believed in. No matter what choice they made, someone was going to feel a profound sense of loss.
And what made things even more emotionally intense was how their personal struggles began reflecting onto the land itself. The same ranch that once felt like a sanctuary started carrying the weight of their disagreements. Every corner of that property held memories, some beautiful, some painful, and walking through it meant facing a life they were no longer living. For Gwen especially, the ranch began to shift from a symbol of possibility into a reminder of what was slipping away.
It's heartbreaking when you think about it. The very thing that once brought them closer together eventually became the place where the divide between them felt the deepest. And when the legal team stepped in and the discussions became more formal and detached, the ranch wasn't just land anymore. It turned into the center of a decision that would shape both of their lives once the marriage ended. It was no longer about who worked the land or who lived there more. It was about who could walk away from it without losing themselves in the process.
Everything finally shifted when Gwen realized she couldn't stay tied to a place that would only remind her of what she lost. The ranch had been a dream when they built it together, but without the marriage, it felt hollow, like living inside a chapter that had already ended.
And she knew the cost of fighting for it. Even if she won legally, she'd be forcing Blake to give up the one thing that grounded him the most. For her, keeping the home wasn't worth reopening wounds that were already deep enough.
So she made the decision people didn't expect. She let it go. She stepped back from any claim on the home they built together. It wasn't weakness, it was clarity. She understood that holding on to the ranch wouldn't bring her peace. It would only keep her tied to a life that wasn't hers anymore.
For Blake, it was a bittersweet relief. He kept the land, the home, and the chapel. But he also kept the memories, and those didn't feel as comforting as they once did. Winning the ranch didn't erase the pain of losing the family that had filled it. It's strange how a place so full of love can turn into a reminder of everything that slipped away. Blake got the ranch, but the silence left behind was its own kind of burden, because the paradise they built together now belonged to only one of them.
In the end, the story of Blake Shelton's ranch isn't just about land or legal decisions. It's about how love can shape a place, and how that place changes when the love that built it fades. 10 Point Ranch started as Blake's sanctuary, became their shared paradise, and now stands as a reminder of everything they experienced together.
Yeah, and it shows that even when relationships end, the pieces of them don't disappear. They take different forms. For Blake, the ranch carries history, heartbreak, and healing all at once. For Gwen, letting it go was her way of choosing peace, of stepping forward without dragging the past with her.
It's a bittersweet ending, but a real one, because some places hold stories that stay with you forever, even when the people in those stories move on.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. If you found this breakdown meaningful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories just like this. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.